I'm Alma Lee. I'm a psychotherapist and transformative lifestyle resiliency coach and author, and I want to help you reach your goals by teaching you how to step outside of those fear-based mindsets and into your powerful, loving self. Let's get started. Yeah, we're going to get into it today. I got a question for you. You know that person that you've had, maybe in your past, maybe right now, maybe currently? They always know what buttons to push to set you off. That person that always seems to know how to drive a point home and say the thing that causes you to get super angry and super triggered and super dysregulated. That's the word of the day today, is dysregulated. I want you to understand something. This is a tough love episode of From Fear to Love, by the way. You're giving away your power. It's not that there's anything wrong necessarily with being dysregulated. We all get dysregulated. Being dysregulated is absolutely normal. It's normal to be pissed off. It's normal to be tearful. It's normal to be sad. But what's not normal is when you are in a situation, a relationship, it could be anybody, that you recognize this person consistently, for whatever reason, they always push those buttons with you, especially when it's in relationship to your personal, intimate partnerships. If you are in a relationship with someone that does not seem to care about you being upset or pissed off, and then maybe they're the person that has a tendency to come in and clean it up, you're giving your power away. I want you to pay attention to that. Dysregulation. Dysregulation, if you do not get that part of how you are responding to situations like that under control, it's going to be your downfall. And here's why. There are people in this world that will seek to intentionally upset you, seek to intentionally get a response from you that is an angry response, so that they can make themselves out to be the victim, so that they can be the hero and come in and fix it. Or maybe they do it because they need to feel like you're still invested. It's a toxic way of reassuring themselves that you actually still care, because you're passionate about it through your anger or your tearfulness. So for them, it's a reassurance of some weird dysfunctional type. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? You know that person that always pushes your buttons. That person that when you ask them to change a particular behavior, they look at that particular behavior as something to be dismissed or ignored, or worse yet, they pay attention to what upsets you and then they continue to do it on purpose. Here's the thing. If you're not careful with how you're managing your energy, you're throwing it all down the toilet because you're not paying attention to other people's actions. You might have it built up in your mind that you can change this person, or this person means well, or they don't know any better. I'll give you that. In some instances, there are people that don't know any better. But here's the thing. Don't you think that if you express to this person in a calm manner that whatever they're doing, whatever engagement that they are engaging in is bothering you for whatever reason, don't you think that they would make a solid effort to change that behavior or to ask you to explain it further? Here's the thing. You are the steward of your well-being. You are the responsible party to determine what experiences you have in life. And when you learn a lesson, when you see how another person engages with you, you are the only responsible party to that engagement, where you have to resolve whether or not to pull back their access to you. The access that they have to you is something that you're giving that person. You're allowing them to dysregulate you because you are participating in that exchange. Now, I'm not sitting here trying to fix everything all in one episode in regards. I know that these are complex. This is not an easy issue. It's not a one-stop shop. But it's important to be aware of what's going on. A lot of people get consumed in relationships They don't understand that what's going on here is a form of reactive abuse. You've heard of it before. Reactive abuse is where a person will do something or say something to trigger a response out of someone else intentionally to get that person so elevated in their emotional response so that the other person, the person who is inflicting the behavior, will calm down and play the victim, to get you to feel like you're the crazy one. I have experienced this myself. I know exactly what it feels like to be on the receiving end of reactive abuse. Now, I'm not justifying any behaviors that I've engaged in the past. I own my behavior. I own all of my BS. But, looking back, hindsight's 2020, I see very clearly where I allowed and condoned certain engagements, and I didn't even see the forest for the trees because I wasn't connecting the dots. I wasn't seeing that I had asked this person over and over and over again to stop doing something, and then they promised in the moment that they would stop doing it, and then they would do it again. Looking back on it, I can see very clearly it was done intentionally. It just makes total sense. The math just maths. It adds up. And so this is what I want you to be aware of too, is take a look at your life. Take a look at those instances where you get emotionally charged, where you get so pissed off that you are out of control. Well, guess what's happening in those situations, particularly when it's happening? I'm not talking necessarily about your little kids, but maybe teenagers on up. Teenagers can be really good at engaging in this. They, especially if they don't fear the repercussions of their actions. You've got to take that into consideration as well. More or less, I'm talking more about romantic partnerships, especially if you are involved in a toxic relationship with someone. Take a look at the last time that you got pissed off at this person. Was it the first time? Was it the first time that you had asked this person to change whatever it was they were doing? So it's important to add up, do the math. And, I'll say this, this is, I say this all the time, is this is not a blame game, and it's not a fault-finding mission either, but you have to acknowledge what's going on in the patterns of what you're tolerating in order to make the affirmative changes, in order to move forward in a healthier way, in a healthier fashion, if you want to. I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast that you have the intention of living a healthier life. I don't think that if you're willfully intentional in existing in a toxic headspace, you would listen to a podcast about changing your life from a fear-based mindset into a love-based mindset. So I just want to make that assumption. But it's not about blaming yourself. It's not about saying, oh, well, I'm screwing up here, or I'm tolerating this. It's just acknowledging. It's observation. It's not judgment or blame. It's observation. So when's the last time you got really wound up? When's the last time someone did something to you or around you that caused you to lose your freaking mind, right? Now, was it the first time it had ever happened? Think about it. Sit down with your journal. Write it out. When's the last time I got really ticked off? When's the last time I got my feelings hurt and I became angry? When's the last time this particular event occurred in my life? And then you write that in your journal, and then you do the math in your head, when's the time before that? What led up to this particular event? Had you asked them something that made them, feel triggered, or they responded to you in some way as a retaliation? Here's the thing. I'm not saying that I think, you're the perfect person and this person that's treating you this way is a terrible person. That's not what I'm saying. But I am telling you that if you want your life to work out in a healthier fashion, you've got to do the math. And you've got to identify the areas in your life where you are tolerating someone treating you poorly that's causing you to come unraveled in those situations where on the other end of it you have regret or you have guilt or shame attached to your behavior, especially if it's not the only time it's happened. You got to ask yourself, what led up to that, and why did I lose my cool? Why did I become dysregulated? Now, here's my answer to that, okay? And this is just a 20-25 minute clip But it's something to plant a seed for thought for you, is to consider the fact that dysregulation is normal. It's a normal part of being a human being. Getting your feelings hurt, becoming angry, those are normal byproducts of fear, okay? It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. But if you find that you are in a consistent space where you are overwhelmed with anger to the point where you are out of control, especially if you lash out at people and you become the aggressor, that's what you need to get under control. That is the part that's going to end up being your downfall. You know, people have gone to jail for lesser crimes. You know, you got to be aware of how you're responding to people. You got to be aware of what people are doing to set you up for failure. You know, keep in mind, you know, I don't want people to go through life and feel like everybody around them can't be trusted. But at the same time, if you don't know what's going on underneath your nose, you're not going to be able to do anything else. You've got to understand your own responses before you can even look at what other people are doing. So you have to ask yourself those questions about dysregulation. The first thing that I would ask you is this. What pisses you off? What is it? What gets you going? What's a deal breaker for you when it comes to your emotional responses? What sets you off into the stratosphere? And better yet, do you know other people where you can say something to them and you know for a fact that you can get a guaranteed reaction out of them? It's like pulling puppet strings, you know? It's like you take all of their power away if you push those buttons in a certain sequence. If you say something to somebody a certain way, you know that they're going to respond to you a certain way. The same thing can be said about yourself. You know, I can openly admit that I grew up as a very angry young woman. I had a lot of repressed feelings of worthlessness, feeling like I wasn't good enough, feeling like I was unlovable, and being really, really angry when I was disrespected. Now, I've been through EMDR therapy, which is a trauma therapy, eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. And part of that process of going through EMDR is identifying what your triggers are. If you're a person of trauma, if you have pre-existing wounds that you have not addressed, I highly recommend you look into EMDR therapy for your trauma, because the initial part of that is doing a personal inventory of what your triggers are. And you have to figure out what is it that causes you to kind of lose your mind in the moment. For me, I had no idea that mine was being disrespected. And it still is to that day. I don't think that's ever going to change for me. But what has changed is me understanding how I used to respond to being disrespected. I became a victim of myself because I was so unaware of how I was reacting in those conditions that I would just go nuts. I would just lose my mind. I would become so angry and so reactive that I would verbally accost anybody in my path that, you know, how dare they? How dare you disrespect me? You know, I would always offer up a response. Now, if you're looking at that from outside looking in, you can clearly see how that's not productive. In fact, that was me willfully, albeit unintentionally, but willfully giving away my power. That's the thing. That's what that's what my purpose is to help people regain their power. That's what the virtual power shop is about. It's about understanding where your power lies, understanding yourself, understanding the programs that we are all groomed, inherently, culture, society, dogma, all of those things that get into our self, and they are obstacles in our path forward. The things that we believe about ourselves getting in the way of how we change. So in my mind, I felt like, well, nobody else is going to stand up for me. I got to stand up for myself, which is what I would do at every turn. But what I didn't realize I was doing was that I was giving my power away at every turn. So if anybody wanted to see a reaction out of me, all they had to do was disrespect me. And then they're going to get a total fireworks show. Speaking of fireworks, it's interesting. I actually remember being bullied at school. I think I was in 7th grade, and coming home just so full of venom and just so angry and upset. And I remember sharing that with my dad. And, often at times, we would have we would have good times too. And my dad was extremely intelligent. He was a very, very smart man. I remember telling him, I was like, Dad, I was like, this girl at school is bullying me, and she's saying this and she's saying that, and I can't believe it. And at the time, I felt very, ignored by my father, but I do remember what he said, and I carried that with me to this day, and it makes a lot of sense to me now. He said, you know why people buy fireworks? And I was like, I remember feeling like, what is he talking about? He's not even listening to me. He says, listen, he goes, people buy fireworks. They spend their hard-earned money on buying things to watch them blow up. And I remember thinking, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about fireworks. I'm talking about this girl picking on me. But he said, people pay a lot of money to watch a show. They get entertained by seeing things blow up. Man, that makes so much sense to me now, because I've been a victim to it myself. And I recognize that. And I recognize how people who, maybe this is you, or maybe somebody people who do not possess the ability or the strength of self to communicate clearly will get their needs met in a dysfunctional fashion. If a person, for instance, is unsure of the investment of their partnership, if they are unsure whether or not their partner is willing to fight for them, they will create a battle. They'll create a perceived place of combat to see how much investment the other person has for them. They don't care that they're upset. They don't care that they've dysregulated this person. They don't care that this person gets angry. They don't care that this person gets sad. And they don't care that this person is damaged by the behavior. It's a dysfunctional, toxic form of abuse that this person will engage upon their partner to see whether or not they are going to push back. And I can remember experiencing this. So is that the case for you? Are you experiencing something like this? Or have you ever experienced something like this where you felt like, oh gosh, why won't they stop doing this thing that they're doing? Why are they doing this to me over and over again? I told them 2 weeks ago to stop doing this, and now they're doing it again. Oh my gosh. Did it ever occur to you to ask the question that maybe they're doing it intentionally because they derive a benefit from your fuel? They get fueled by your anger. Maybe they're reassured in seeing that maybe because they can still anger you, that you're still invested in the union. Because you know what? One telltale sign of a person not caring is someone's inability to piss that person off. When you walk away with a shrug and be like, whatever, do whatever, I don't care. See, that's a different takeaway. Think about that the next time you feel that thing. When you're having that engagement with that person and that person does that thing that you've talked to them about, please don't do that, or please do that. If you would stop doing that, I would stop getting angry. Yeah, they know. So think about it next time it happens. Think about when you were dysregulated, whether or not it was the first time, and especially if it wasn't the first time you were dysregulated. Pay attention to when it shows up again and change your response to, all right, whatever. Pull the plug and then observe and watch what happens. Most likely what will happen on the other end of it, that person will ante up and they will double down on whatever it was they did to begin with to hopefully tick you off and increase their effort to try and get that response. Pay attention. Pay attention to actions. Pay attention to people's actions at any turn, because actions never lie. People will lie, but their actions will always tell you exactly where their head is at, because people will always do what they want. All you have to do is pay attention and not lie to yourself about what they're doing. So, how do you prevent being dysregulated? Well, I don't think that you can. I don't think that you can prevent it, rather. But you can definitely stop showing it. And that is what you should do. That is what you should pay attention to. For me, I have a personal contract. I don't get pissed off anymore. You're not going to see me get pissed off. I'm not giving myself away that way any longer. The only people that will ever see my reaction are my very, very close and dear friends. And the thing is that those are not the people that are going to try to piss me off anyway. They're going to understand me, which is different. But if somebody does something or says something that upsets me, I have a contract with myself that I take very seriously, that when I start to feel myself get dysregulated, and I pay attention to that, and it is a practice. Trust me, I've been doing this for a couple years now. It ain't going to happen overnight, because your muscle memory, your knee-jerk response to being triggered, you're dealing with people who are crazy. It's a hard habit to break, to stop doing the thing that you've always done. But the first few times it happens, you'll recognize it, and you'll say, that's what Alma was talking about in that podcast that day. That now I know. See, when you recognize how those emotions show up in your body and you feel them, it's okay. It's okay to be dysregulated. That's the thing. You don't have to go to war with every person who's trying to combat you, who's trying to battle you. You don't have to show up and make threats and return fire. You don't have to. And I'm not saying that you should be a doormat to abuse. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying you observe and you pay attention and you discern whether or not you want to participate in that connection any further. Because here's the thing. If somebody cares about you, if they really, genuinely care about you, their actions will reflect that at every turn. Make no mistakes. And if you are in a situation with someone where you're like, oh, but it's not that easy, Alma, you know what? It kind of is. And you know what? If you're ignoring the signs, and if your higher self is in, telling you, I should probably not allow this person access to me, that just means that you're attached. And you can pull back from that. It sucks. I know. I get it. But don't you deserve to put yourself first anyway? I mean, that's what I kind of preach on. That's kind of the pulpit that I stand on, is to tell people to be mindful of your power and to be mindful of the allowances that you give other people. Access to you is a privilege. And if you are not being a good steward of your well-being and you're allowing people to have access to you and you're responding with anger whenever people treat you a certain way, you're going to consistently be in those situations where you are completely out of control and you're responsible for your behavior at the end of the day. As adults, we all are, and maybe you just needed to hear this. Maybe you just needed to hear it from a third party tell you that somebody who actually cares about you, if somebody actually, gives a damn about your response, they'll change their behavior and they'll have a conversation with you. They'll be open with you. They will communicate clearly, and they'll be consistent in changing their behavior and consistent in their clear communication. But people who cannot clearly communicate will look for different, alternative, dysfunctional, and toxic ways of getting their needs met because they fear clear communication, but they need information. So they'll go about it by engaging in intentional dysregulation in order to see whether or not you're still invested. Yeah, I hope that hits home for you. I want you to succeed. I want you to have the opportunities to look at life from a different perspective, a different vantage point, an empowered vantage point. You deserve it. You deserve to give yourself a second chance to do things, to do business in your life differently. So I made a contract with myself. I don't allow people to openly and actively dysregulate me. That doesn't mean people don't piss me off. They do. I get pissed off. It's just normal to be pissed off. Of course I get angry, but I don't show it. It's a contract. It's a promise that I made to myself. I deserve that. There's an old commercial back in the 80s. I think it was Speed Stick, deodorant, antiperspirant. And it said, never let them see you sweat. And that's pretty much the case here. Don't ever let them see you sweat. Don't ever let them see your cards. Somebody who wants you to be openly pissed off needs you to actively engage so that they get what they need on the other end of it. And then where does that leave you? Where does that leave you? Huh? Something to think about. So you got to understand what dysregulates you? For me, disrespect. I mean, there's other things, but nothing really irks me quite like disrespect. And I think that's always going to be the case for me. I've done remarkable strides in figuring out people who, are neglectful and listening to me. And, I look at it this way. And when I think about the mindset of, access to me is a privilege, then if someone cannot respect or cannot fully engage with me in the way that I need them to, then it's not a punishment, but you know what? I'm just going to remove access. Because if your behavior causes me to feel dysregulated, whether I show it or not is irrelevant, but if your behavior causes me to feel dysregulated, I am going to take measures to remove myself from those engagements as much as possible, especially when the engagement is a consistency. And maybe it's a work-related thing. Maybe it's somebody that you have to work with. You can take measures to enforce certain boundaries with those people. And you can also stand up for yourself without using anger. That's a process. And I encourage you to talk to a therapist to help learn healthier ways of engaging people like this so that you can affirm who you are in those moments without using anger. Think about it. Actions never lie. And, you can let people just do what they're going to do and observe them, because people, they'll always show you who they are. All you have to do is watch them. That's it. You don't try and help them out when it comes time to like meeting appointments and not doing or doing the thing that they promised you they would or would not do. Observe it. Observe it. You may think that you're helping them by reminding them, hey, can you not do this, or can you do this for me? No. Stop doing that. Stop it. Step back, tell them once, and watch what happens. That is all you really need. Because at the end of the day, if you continually engage with people that you're constantly having to remind, reassure, and then get ticked off and pissed off whenever they don't do that, well, you are being your biggest obstacle to your own fulfillment in that regard, because you're tolerating crappy behavior and you're putting yourself in those situations. Not a blame game, but it's important to acknowledge that you're the one with all the power. You're the one that gets to decide on how these situations move forward. So, yeah, getting angry, being upset, that's normal. Showing it and allowing other people to pull your puppet strings is not. Pay attention. Watch what they do. And don't babysit them anymore. Take some notes, get your journal out, find out what it is that causes you to get dysregulated. Take some inventory. When was the last time someone dysregulated you? What was going on? Was it the first time? Has it happened before? Is it a constant habit with this person? Remove your angry response or your tearful response that they're used to the next time they try and engage you, and see what they do. Pay attention to what they do. Chances are they will magnify their behavior because they need you to escalate yours as well. And if that's the case, well, maybe it's time to consider cleaning house a little bit. All right. From Fear to Love. This has been an LBM production. Please like, subscribe, and share this show. Thanks for listening.